Okay, so you want to be a sipahi, a cavalry lord of the Ottoman Empire. Picture it. The Sultan himself grants you land, fields, and villages stretching past the horizon, yours to hold in his name. You ride out at the head of your own retainers, banner snapping, armor catching the light. Peasants bow as you pass. Every harvest is yours to draw from before it ever reaches a treasury clerk. You are, in every visible way, a lord, landed, armed, answerable to no one but the throne. Then you open a real timar register from the 16th century. Your grant isn't a gift. It's a job description with a war attached. That land was never really yours. It was the state's tax revenue, redirected straight to you instead of passing through the treasury first. Miss 7 years of campaigns? For any reason? And it's reassigned to someone else. Not what the banners sang, what the register said. So here's your first correction. This wasn't a salaried army the way you're picturing it. The Ottoman state didn't mint coin and hand it to most of its soldiers. It didn't have to. A sipahi's pay was the right to collect a specific village's taxes directly, permanently on the hook to show up mounted, armed, and ready every single campaign season, for as long as he held the land. We'll measure everything in one honest unit. The day wage of an ordinary laborer, worth roughly 5 silver akce in Istanbul during the empire's strongest decades. Not ducats, not gold sultani, not vague riches. A single day of a working man's labor. It's the number that won't lie to you about scale, and you'll need it later when the coin itself stops behaving. Start with what a timar actually was. Fiefs were sorted by their own tax yield. Under 20,000 akce a year made you a plain timar holder. 20 to 100,000 made you a zemet lord. And anything above that was a has, reserved for governors and top commanders. At the bottom tier, that's around 11 years of a laborer's wages. Not a fortune, but land, status, and a horse. And every akce of it came with strings. You supplied your own mount and armor, plus a scaled number of armed retainers called sebelu, out of that same revenue, before you ever spent a coin on yourself. Fall short of that obligation, and the land was never really lost. It simply reverted to a sultan who'd only ever been lending it to you. Running parallel to you and paid completely differently was the empire's other army, the janissaries. Unlike sipahis, they took no land at all, just a fixed cash wage in akce, paid directly from the treasury, month after month, war or peace. 2 armies, 2 payment systems coexisting inside the same empire. One running on land tax redirected in the field, one running on hard coin from the capital. That split is about to matter enormously. So how did the state itself actually get rich underneath both of those armies? Not from conquest alone. 3 real income streams. First, the timar system itself. Indirect, decentralized, self-collecting tax revenue that never touched the treasury. Second, iltizam, tax farming, where the state auctioned the right to collect taxes on markets, salt pans, even entire provinces to whichever bidder, a multizam, promised the most, who then kept anything he could squeeze past that number. Third, tariffs on trade passing through Ottoman ports and roads, some of the busiest in the world, including special low-friction terms granted to foreign merchants under treaties called capitulations, which exempted them from local courts and local searches in exchange for steady, predictable trade the empire wanted flowing through its cities. Here's your second correction. That tax farming system wasn't a stable source of income. It was a landlord's nightmare dressed as a shortcut. Contracts ran 1 to 3 years, which meant every multizim had every incentive to extract as much as physically possible before someone else outbid him for the same district. By 1695, the treasury was so drained by decades of war that it rebuilt the whole system. Malikane, lifetime tax farming rights instead of short leases, sold for a massive upfront payment, sometimes 2 to 10 times a year's expected revenue, plus annual fees on top. The state had essentially started selling its own future income to cover its present emergencies. Here's what breaks it. In 1589, soldiers discovered what happens when a government quietly changes what its own coin is worth. Between Suleiman's reign and his grandson Murat's, the gold coin's value in akce nearly doubled, from 63 akce to 120, meaning every fixed akce wage, sipahi and janissary alike, had lost close to half its real value, without a single law being passed to announce it. That April, janissaries in Constantinople rose up, executed the chief treasurer and the official blamed for the devaluation, and forced the Grand Vizier from office. Sipahis rebelled next, demanding the same correction, and roughly 400 of them were killed by the palace guard before the crisis was contained. The empire's soldiers had just learned, violently, that being paid in a fixed number of coins means nothing if the coins themselves can be quietly hollowed out. Good era, bad era. The difference was everything. In the empire's strongest stretch, state revenue was self-generating and largely self-sufficient. No meaningful foreign debt existed before the middle of the 19th century. Compare that to 1854, when the empire took its first foreign loan to cover a war it couldn't otherwise afford. And by 1875, that debt had ballooned past 240 million Turkish pounds, forcing the government to publicly admit it could no longer make payments. Centuries of self-funded land grants and tax auctions had quietly given way to something the early sultans never needed: a permanent compounding bill owed to outsiders. So who actually got rich as that bill kept growing? Not the sipahis. Most held modest fiefs, and the whole system was already fading by the 18th century. Not the janissaries, who'd already discovered exactly how little a fixed wage protects you. It was the Galata bankers, Christian and Jewish financiers clustered across the water from the palace, who made their fortunes lending hard cash to a treasury that was chronically, structurally short of it. Abraham Salomon Commando, prime banker to the Ottoman state through most of the 19th century, was even made a hereditary count for his financial services. Not for winning a battle, not for holding a fief, but for having ready money exactly when the empire needed it most. The sipahi held the land. The janissary held a wage the treasury could quietly gut overnight. The banker held the debt. And debt, it turns out, was the one asset in this whole empire that never once needed defending on a battlefield.